Hey folks, how are y'all doing today? Y'all ready to go? First and foremost, I want to point out that this investigation that we completed would not have been possible without us all working together. And you see all of the agencies that's involved, from DEA to statewide prosecutor, highway patrol, Manatee Sheriff's Office, State Attorney's Office, and certainly the Polk County Sheriff's Office, HIDA. And I cannot overstate the cooperation between Jimmy DiCaprio, who is our supervisor in charge of DEA, and the Sheriff's Office. Folks, these types of investigations that we've just completed are very, very expensive, and it takes us all working together to make this happen. But we're going to try to put this in the proper context today, so as we go through, I'm going to give you snippets of information, and then if you have any questions, you can ask those at the end. We started in March gathering information for this investigation, and as we put the pieces together in order to reach the end game, the operation actually took about 5.5 weeks. And during that 5.5 week period of time, our folks seized 65 pounds of pure methamphetamine. It came over in liquid form for the most part. 65 pounds. Now, when you break that down, when you turn it from a liquid back into a solid, and when you cut it, step on it, as they say in the streets, it was a $5 million operation that we were able to totally dismantle this particular operation. Now, when we talk about the operation that we were able to dismantle, Operation Numero Uno, we found that was interesting because our big contact that we were focusing on in Mexico, he called himself Uno, and a couple of our agents, this was their first wire, so we thought Operation Numero Uno was appropriate. It's important that you understand not only the complexity, not only that we see 65 pounds of methamphetamine, which would have been stepped on many times, and at least triple or quadrupled to hundreds of pounds of methamphetamine and distributed throughout the state of Florida and Central Florida. But 7 of these folks that we arrested during this operation should not even be here. They're illegal. They're not supposed to be in this country. 7 of them. And if that doesn't frustrate you enough, as you look through here, you find out that Guadalupe Aguirre, who is our main man here, is getting federal assistance. Now, I know you all in the paper or in the news business, and not that I'd point out anybody, but Ken says, well, that's not the main focus. But here's the bigger picture. Not only are they putting pounds and pounds and pounds of pure poison into the nose and the bodies of our children, not only are 7 of them here illegally, but they're getting federal assistance, several of them. The main man is getting federal assistance. Are you kidding me? We've got to wake up. We've got to do something. But let me kind of draw a snapshot here. They produce this meth. It starts out at $2,000 a kilo. They charge $3,000 to get it across the border to $5,000 a kilo. Then they ship it down where it sells for, depending on who you are, anywhere from $17,000 to $30,000 a kilo. And then they step on it and they sell it at the street level for up to $5 million with this operation. I like to talk about the candy, if I can, for just a minute. In this one house, there was a 7-year-old child, and he knew, he was trained. The real candy was in one side of the room. The methamphetamine candy was in another side of the room. And he knew which was the candy that he should eat and which he knew had the methamphetamine. So here's another one of their ways. They put the meth, they conceal the meth inside candy, and then they wrap it. Then they sell it in packages, or they move it in packages, conceal it, and identify it as candy. They bring it over here, then they break it down and take the meth out of it and reconstitute it as methamphetamine. There was also a 7-year-old that told our detectives while they were doing this investigation that he said, oh, the smell was so bad that it made me sick. And his mother said, but you know, I was stuffing towels underneath the doors to try to keep the smell down. This is what children are exposed to. It's important to understand that we all have our favorite places to shop. Well, Guadalupe Aguirre always liked to do his deals or meet in Lowe's parking lots. And when we arrested some of the folks here, Dustin Pinata, he said, yeah, I knew I was taking a ride to the Lowe's parking lot. I didn't realize I was taking a 15-year ride. And that's what it is. The minimum mandatory of this case for him is 15 years. Now, a couple of these guys on the bottom, Maracas and Albaran, are not in custody at this time. We need to find them. They're illegal. They live in Haines City. They're obviously originally from Mexico. But let's look at pictures. I always like to have flashcards, you know. And if y'all will excuse me, because, you know, in elementary school, they got me started on flashcards and I got hooked on these things. This is our man here. He doesn't have a bad criminal history, but here he is a legal, let me see, he is a resident alien. So he has status as a resident. He's not supposed to be able to have this firearm. He cannot get a concealed firearms license, but he has top quality equipment that he uses to protect his meth deals. So while we have him locked up for drugs, if you look at his firearms that he had in his house, none of this is cheap. Where there's drugs, there's money. Where there's drugs and money, there's guns. And at the end of the day, this guy's very dangerous. Then we've got Jesus. He's our candy man. He is the one that specialized in bringing the candy over. Jesus is our buddy. And then there's the cook. That is the one that just drives me crazy. There were 3 children in the residence when he was cooking. 3. And he was exposing the children to this highly toxic environment so he could convert methamphetamine from a liquid form to a solid form and sell it later on. And then there was Rachel. She lives with Hernandez Rodriguez. She also gets federal assistance. And she has a lot of charges. But isn't this interesting? She gets $600 a month in federal assistance. Now, one might ask, what do these people do for a living? They sell drugs. Not one of them has a legitimate job. Not one of them. No legitimate job. Some of them are receiving federal assistance. 7 of them are here illegally, and they're poisoning the people of the state of Florida. And you wonder why we get frustrated. Well, now you know. If I can, I would like to invite my colleague, who is the real expert, and he's going to talk to you about this scourge and this fight that we do, not only at a local level, but on a national level. And Jimmy, once again, I want to compliment you and DEA. It's the teamwork and it's the horsepower that the federal government gives us with these operations that allows us to take off 65 pounds of pure methamphetamine before it gets to the street. Come on up and talk to the folks.
Good afternoon. It was a pretty good introduction by the sheriff. This organization, when you're dealing with these types of people, you know, you have the methamphetamine users okay? And if you look at what the effects are from methamphetamine, it's very simple. It's the ingredients. It's a recipe for death. And why people use this is beyond me. It's something I don't understand, and it's the reason why we have to keep our enforcement efforts going. On top of that, you have the methamphetamine traffickers. And by the pictures alone, when you have individuals that are putting methamphetamine in candy, it shows the ruthlessness of these individuals. They're heartless. They don't care about human life past the first dollar they make on the sale of the stuff. And, you know, what's good about this investigation is, you know, working with Polk County, they're very aggressive. And they see the investigation to the end. This isn't over. They dismantled this organization, but they're not going to rest, nor are we. And as the sheriff said, it's teamwork. It's continuing to fight. There is not going to be a surrender by any means with these organizations and by law enforcement. These guys are working 24/7. Okay, there's not a 9-to-5 job. In order to be effective, these guys are going to keep fighting. They're going to keep working 24 hours a day, seven days a week. And it was a great effort by this department, also by the other partners that worked this case. But the mere putting together this case, the strategic method that they used, and the persistence to keep going after these guys, and allowing the people of this county and in Central Florida as a whole to be reassured once again that law enforcement is continuing to provide a safe community. As far as methamphetamine, you know, we continue to see this as an issue because of the cheap price. A lot of times, you know, when you do drug deals, you need to pay for it first. A lot of times with methamphetamine, they are trying to push this out in the streets for free. They want you to get addicted first and then pay later. And it's a tough challenge right now, and because it's so cheap and easy to make, it's a tougher challenge for law enforcement. But I just want to once again provide many thanks and accolades to the department for their hard work and efforts. And like I said, it's an honor to work with these guys and what they're doing every day and putting their lives on the line. A lot of times we take it for granted what law enforcement does every day, and it's something that we still have to respect the badge and respect law enforcement, because they're the ones that are actually protecting you every day. And a lot of times we overlook that.
Thank you, sir.
Can you say your name for us and spell it?
Jimmy DiCaprio, DICAPRIO.
Okay, as we close out today, there is, I call this editorial comment, and when I say that, Scott Wilder starts to cringe. You know, there's those in this country that think these poor misguided people don't need to be in prison. Well, where do you want them? They're here illegally. They've dumped or tried to dump 65 pounds of pure meth in Central Florida. They're getting, some of them are getting federal assistance. None of them are working. None of them are doing anything positive in society, but they're trying to poison your children, and as Jimmy said, addict your children today and worry about collecting money from them tomorrow. These are evil people who must go to prison. We must send the message. If you come here, if you think you're going to bring this kind of weight and this kind of drugs to our country, to our children, get ready to go to jail. Get ready to go to prison for a very long time. And I don't care how many people in the top administration can identify with you, the rest of America can't. Any questions for us?
Sheriff, at one point we used to be nicknamed the meth capital of the world, Polk County.
Are we still a pass-through kind of place?
You know, we had a conversation about that a minute ago. Back in the 80s, when, and some of y'all go, I wasn't even born at that time, and I sure didn't care. Back in the 80s, when they had the old P2P based method of making methamphetamine, which had a horrific smell, they had to go to open areas, which Polk County qualified for, in order to set up a meth lab, because you had to literally get out in the middle of a cow pasture or out in the middle of the woods so you would not be discovered, and it took a real laboratory. Those days are gone. We're not the meth capital. You show me any community that proactively investigates drugs, and I'll show you a drug culture there, whether it's methamphetamine, which is very popular because it gives you a longer high for your same dollar, or it may be heroin in some quadrants, or it may be pills in others. But there's a drug market here. Is Polk County the meth capital? No. But there's meth all over the United States, and we're no exception. And I suggested to folks, well, if we quit investigating drugs and we didn't make any drug arrests, does that mean there's no drugs, or does it mean we're not doing our job? What the men and women from the federal government to the state government to the local government are doing is we're telling you, we're all here protecting you and protecting your children from these kind of folks, the kind of folks that a small percentage of our society doesn't think they need to be locked up. Well, I'm still waiting for those folks to tell me where they should be, other than because we don't want them in our neighborhood selling drugs. So at the end of the day, no, we're not the meth capital, but we are the meth arresting capital of Florida. We will lock you up if you illegally have drugs in this county. Plan on it.
The drug came over the border in the liquid form, and then it was made into candy here?
Made in candy in there.
Oh, so
It was smuggled. There was two different ways. It came over in a liquid form, or it came over in a candy form, and then they reconstituted it to meth over here. Anything else?
How many homes inside of Polk County were involved in this operation?
How many what?
Homes, actual homes, were they making it? Was this one
Well,
home?
we served, how many search warrants did we serve? 2 search warrants. 2 different places.
Can you also remind me who the two gentlemen you're looking for still?
We're looking for these 2 guys right here. And Marcos,
Bottom.
Acuna, and I'm real good with Spanish anyway. The 2 in the bottom. These 2 that with a red box that show that they're here illegal. Some people want to say they're undocumented, so I would tell you they're undocumented illegals for those who want. They're here in violation of the federal law that if you don't like, you just ignore.
You gotta understand the culture. I mean, you're teaching your child that's 7 years old, that's home with mom, which candy has meth and which candy doesn't. I mean, you know, what is the value? What's going on in the household when you're coming over here, and your parents? You know, these organizations, like I said, that it's, you know, what's going on with these organizations and the family values? You know, there's no separation between the drug dealers and their children. I mean, you're sitting there telling them. I mean, do you think that child's going to remember which bag has the meth and which bag doesn't, or if the pile is so high that one bag falls over into the other pile? Are you willing to risk that with your children? I mean, it's, you know, like I said, when I say they're ruthless, it's trying to understand what they're doing to people here in the United States, and how people even, what drives someone to use this drug. I mean, it's so dangerous. Just go Google it. Go look at all the effects that you have. There's nothing good about it. And the people that are selling it, you know, they're just trying to get us addicted. And I always say is when you're addiction and money, it's just a real bad combination. And you know, eventually methamphetamine users, and very rapidly, you see the effects on them. When you see these people walking in the streets and their bodies are hollowed out and they have, you know, burn marks on their face and tooth decay, pretty good chance that they may be one of the meth users. And the effects come very quickly and rapidly, and it just destructs the body, and eventually, you know, they're knocking on heaven's door.
What would happen if a child ingested an amount that was in the wrapper, and were there any cases where that happened?
I haven't heard of any cases happening in this area, but I would imagine that the person would probably go into heart failure and die. I mean, there's been cases where, I know of a case years ago where a child ingested liquid cocaine and he died instantly. So, you know, depending on, you know, the risks they take in shipping liquid cocaine over, and depending on what ways they use to mask it, I mean, if they're willing to put it in candy, they're willing to put it in anything. And you look at, you know, if you're putting it in a alcohol bottle, at least maybe you're dealing with individuals. The risk is at an adult level. Here, the risk is at a child's level. You know, you're really, I mean, that's ruthless. It's pretty disgusting. And I'm glad I'm glad these guys have been arrested and they're off the street, because they're just plain dangerous.
Your title is special agent.
I'm the assistant special agent in charge. I'm in charge of the Tampa district office.
These are not people like you and I. These are people that don't care about life, and they want money. And if your children die as a consequence, oh well. Thank you very much. Have a great day. See you all later.